Good evening. I want to reconvene the Tuesday, July 17th, 2018 meeting of the Select Board. We know the meeting is properly warned because we went into executive session at 5:30. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes of July 3rd? We have a motion to approve the minutes of July 3rd. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Motion carries 4-0. We'll make note that we're missing one member this evening. Chair's remarks, and I was trying to think of some remark I could make, but I can't think of anything. So I'm going to skip over that and ask the town manager if he has any remarks.
I also don't have remarks other than for what's on the agenda, so thank you.
Yep. Does anyone else on the board have any comments or committee reports they'd like to make?
I don't. I'd just like to wish Patrick Moreland, our assistant town manager, a happy
birthday.
Thank you, Tim.
It is
Thank you.
today, and you're
On
here,
TV.
and that's a shame.
Yeah.
You made him blush, Tim.
Yeah.
Good work.
And he just showed us all his AARP card.
Gee, thank you, Kate.
Next meeting, he's going to bring in his free tote bag that he got. Did you like to say something?
I did go to the Perry Community Cookout. I don't know if anybody, if the chief wants to mention anything about it. I thought the turnout was good. I don't know. Do you want to say anything about that?
There was the Project Care cookout for the community that was sponsored in part by Hannaford's, CNS, and numerous others that came together, and it kicked off our Project Care, which was born out of the Select Board a year ago from the outreach program. And we got a couple $100 donated for that, and more importantly, the word got spread out. So, well, we ran out of food, so it was a very successful event, and hopefully we can continue the momentum.
Thank you very much. The food, it was a nice turnout, and it was a hot day, and the chief and the captain were slaving away over a very, very, very hot grill. So that was great.
Anyone else?
Nope.
Now we come to the time in the agenda for public participation. And this is the time for anyone in the public who would like to comment on something that is not on tonight's agenda. So is anybody that wants to talk about something not on tonight's agenda? Nope, seeing none. We're going to move on to new business. And the first order of business is the semi-annual update from the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance. And I see Stephanie is here. We get an update, well, semi-annually. The DBA comes and gives us their budget presentation usually in November. I guess last year was December, so they give us an update after each fiscal year ends. So Stephanie, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. All right, thank you for having me. I'm excited because the last time that I talked with you all, I said that I would see success if I knew that you knew already what I was going to talk about. And I feel like you all know exactly what I'm going to talk about, so I put that in the success column. So DBA is set up with 4 different committees: organization, promotion, economic development, and design. And then within those 4 programs, we look at what we do through 3 different audience groups. One is locals, one is people within the 50-mile radius, and one is the overnighters, the Boston, New York, Hartford, Burlington crowd. So within those groups, all of our work fits under. And so I'm going to highlight 5 areas of our work, but would love to talk about anything you want to talk about. So Tidy and Clean House is under organization, and although it is not exactly the most riveting of subject, it is definitely one that is so important. And so I feel like our foundation of our organizational house is firm and steady and very tightened up after the last 8 months. We have the right people in place. We have succeeded at giving you all an inventory of the DID properties and giving that to the state, which they needed. We have a strong community calendar, which we partnered with the Chamber and Brattleboro Savings and Loan, and is now in multiple sites all over Brattleboro and beyond. That community calendar called Plan a Go-Go is on Wilmington Works website and on many others. And so the point there is that it's not just about our ability to bring people to see the calendar on our site, but everybody is seeing the same calendar on multiple sites. And then we have a newly designed website that looks great, but also is very functional. One of the biggest strengths I see is the social media in terms of tightening up the house. And so what we did was we assigned 5 contributors to our social media account. So the voice is not just me. It is people looking at it through the lens of nightlife, people looking at it through family. And so that way, our contributors are able to represent Brattleboro in a much fuller lens, and so our social media is able to. This particular photo got picked up by the New York Times. It was one of 2 photos in their print media that was picked up. Our Instagram audience is the highest in that 25 to 44 age range, which is what we all want to see. We also, because of all the contributors and because of our focus on it, we're able to create interesting content, which is what social media is about. So this particular photo is the photo shoot that we did around International Women's Day and getting all the women leaders and women business owners in town and getting them a shot across Main Street. And this was picked up by many different media outlets and social media as well. The numbers aren't important to me in this slide. What's important is the trajectory. So since having a full-time position starting in December, you can see that the trajectory was just up in terms of the amount of followers that we have in social media.
So it's 15%, no, just a little.
Right, not just a little. Yeah, I learned that the nonprofit the average that you want to see in growth in a nonprofit is 13%. And our actual growth rate was 13%. So moving on to promotion committee. I'm a community organizer, trained at heart. I'm a community organizer, and that's where I see this position, is community organizing. And so there's 2 ways you can community organize, and that is finding an issue and really convincing people that that's the issue that you need to work on and compelling them to your side, to your team. Or you can have an issue that you know everybody's talking about, everybody's mulling over or discussing, and go into that issue. And so I like to do the latter. And with Brattleboro, we right away saw that as the parking issue. So how can we change the conversation around parking? We did it in 3 different ways. One is the golden ticket, which you're aware of, Parking Hero, and Parking Study. The Parking Hero, our goal was to provide levity and some happiness and fun around an issue that can be bogged down with whining and frustration. And don't say I said whining. It really is people's frustration coming out, which I get. So anyway, the Parking Hero is a character that we have created that wears gold spandex, a cape, and your superhero mask, and she goes around and she feeds meters and surprises people by paying parking tickets, and we leave a note on their dashboard saying that the Parking Hero has been here, and either bam, we've paid your ticket, or pow, we've fed your meter. And the success, I deem this a success because of the conversations on social media have all been positive. It has all been talking about what just a fun, playful idea it is. We're not solving any problems, but we're changing the dynamics in the conversation. The second part with the parking study, you all are very well aware, but I wanted to highlight one thing, which is with the bike parking that we are currently working on, we were just given a matching grant of $500, matching donation of $500. So if we could raise $500 in today and yesterday, then they would match us $500, an anonymous donor, and we got it. We raised $530. So we've met our goal, and I'm excited to see what we all do for the next steps for bike parking. We also don't want to leave out that part of the community building that we do is definitely fun. We have all of our target audiences, we have all of our strategy and the reason why we do things, but at the end of the day, the events that we create, a huge part of that is fun. These are pictures from Playdate, which is the kids play. Adults go out on a date. Sometimes that date can be for a walk, sometimes it can be drinks on Peter Haven, sometimes it can be laundry. And then the block parties, which the next block party is July 27th on Elliott Street, and that's the summer block party. And we've had a fall and a winter block party. With working together around promotions, we set a precedent of coming together to use our dollars more wisely. So Vermont Restaurant Week is an example of that. We not only convinced them to do a much more approachable rate to get all of the restaurants involved in Vermont Restaurant Week, but we were also able to afford a one-page ad by all coming in together, and no individual restaurant would have been able to do that. So that's an example there. The other example is Love Crawl, which was the third year this past year, but a little bit different is the way the community decides to engage and play with it. And so the picture there is Randy Solon, Fire Hearts Vermont, and Natalie Blake, thank you. Randy Solon and Natalie Blake both did these glasses here at the bottom that we were then able to sell to benefit their business, also to benefit DBA. We moved towards a green event, and people saw a different way that the community was interacting with the event. The next committee is economic development. We gave $3,000 out of economic development grants to these 3 different applicants, and we will continue to do that. The facade, the last committee is design, and in design is the facade development grants. We gave out over $2,000 in grant money for people to improve the facades of their businesses. And then, of course, the flower program is a huge success. All of our programs are full of volunteers. This one in particular, though, Dick does an amazing job. And as my flowers have been wilting at home, I've thought of him a lot, of what a green thumb he has. It's really quite amazing. So what's next? I'll be excited to talk to you next year, or next time I'm here, about Brattleboro Live, a bike parking percolate, continue outdoor tourism map, more information at the Vermont Welcome Centers, and also Brattleboro ambassadors. So you can stay tuned for that. I also wanted to, as a separate category, which doesn't as much fit so nicely into our 4 groups, but just as the work that we do that's deeper work in helping a lot of the work that's being done by people in this room of making Brattleboro even better. So increasing childcare, I sit on the Child Care Counts Coalition, looking at public safety and panhandling in our town, looking at the low barrier jobs programs that we've all heard about, the Community Response Project, and then also looking at the bigger picture of the need for more visitors to town, and what does that look like, and what is our town going to look like that will attract people to come into town. So what we need to continue our work is to continue our development for board, and our board we just welcomed 1 new person to the board, and we've been in conversation with several others, so I'm excited about the new energy that's coming to our board. We do have an interim president, and that's Mike Eckblum, who's going to carry out Michelle's term, which is through September. And then, of course, fundraising.
Thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions or comments for Stephanie?
It's fantastic. I really appreciate everything that you've been doing. I appreciate the times that I've called, that I've reached out, that you've been really easy to speak to and excited about ideas, and I hope you feel the same way the few times that you've reached out in my direction, and I appreciate it very much. I appreciate all of this. I don't have any question about what you guys are up to because I see it all the time, and that's really exciting.
It's like a little buzz that's constantly ongoing.
Always,
In
yeah.
town.
Yeah, and I've really noticed an uptick in the visibility during Restaurant Week. So I think you guys did a really good job there, because we have a lot of great restaurants.
Yeah.
It seemed to be really involved this time versus other years. Since this is a love fest, do you mind if I give sort of a tongue-in-cheek criticism of one aspect of what you've done? The
I didn't hear
hero.
you say yes or no.
Because you're here, why not, bring something up? The parking hero bugged me a little bit, and I'll tell you why. I think it's a great concept, and it was a lot of fun, and it was very successful. What bugged me is because I was addicted to comic books as a kid, heroes always have villains. And to me, the villain in this situation is...
The town.
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
Maybe.
I know you're going to say the villain is not the town. The villain is just the fact that you have to pay for parking. That's the villain.
You know what? I did not read comic books as a kid, and you're right. I didn't even think about a villain, but I do know that we were really clear in meeting with the town beforehand that we didn't want to. Actually, we might have used the word villainize the town.
And I won't repeat that word that you used before. I know that we struck that from the record. But I think the real heroes in this town are people who pay their parking tickets if they get one, pay the parking meters, because as our taxpayers know, that takes the burden off of them for quite a few things that otherwise our taxpayers would have to pay for. So I think when the parking hero first came out, I originally wanted to create an anti-hero to sort of balance that out. And then I realized, well, I have an infant. I'm not going to get to do that. But so that's my only pushback on the parking hero, although I love the outfit and the whole concept. So
Just made
I
yourself
know.
the villain and like re-put all the parking tickets back.
I could still do it.
Empty the meter.
No, it's just that's that one little thing that bugged me about the parking hero. But so I don't know. I'm not looking for a response. It's just that's my tongue-in-cheek criticism because there's too much love in the room, right?
I realized I didn't bring up the end of the year budget. And so that is with you, and I can
Whatever
answer
you
any
want.
questions you want, but I proudly spent all the money.
Good job.
Yeah, and I proudly spent all of the surplus money,
Excellent.
so,
And just raised a little bit more today.
and raised more today.
Yeah, that's
right.
awesome, by the way.
Yeah, and we also brought in probably the most, no, not because of River Garden, no, but we brought in a lot of money this year as well.
Yeah.
Any more questions, comments from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? All right. Seeing none, thank you, Stephanie.
Great
We
job,
appreciate it.
Stephanie. Thank
We'll see you in a couple months.
Thank the board, thank the board. You guys are awesome.
Next up is the Living Memorial Park Snow Sport Contract. Is Carol Olat going to be doing this? It's hard to believe, Carol, it's snow sport time.
Well, here with me this evening is Zach Brown's. This is a changing of the guard for snow sports. As you saw in my memo, snow sports have had a agreement with the town since the mid-'90s. And they've had a lot of the same volunteers from year to year to year. And now some young blood is coming in, and they're having the changing of the regime at the top. And Zach is the new president. The department has had a good, long-standing relationship with snow sports. Snow sports offers a great winter sports activity, outdoor recreation during the winter months, and it's all done with volunteers. You know, when the rest of the hill still has green grass on it, there's a strip of white, and it's all done with volunteers. And you don't make snow, as Zach can share with you, from 9 to 5. You know, that's stuff that happens from the other 9 to 5, 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. And it's kudos to that organization for all they do. And I think it would be real imperative to continue this good working relationship that we have with them and grant them another 5-year agreement with the town.
And the agreement with the town is for them to be able to do what they do.
Right, yeah. So the agreement is that snow sports would run the T-bar at Living Memorial and provide all the operations that go with it, everything from making snow to grooming to providing the lift people. They do all the fundraising and everything for that operation, and they're able to do that and just charge $5 a head.
$5 a head.
It's great. It's really great.
That's my spiel, unless Zach has something to add.
We are just hoping that we have the approval to continue to give this service to the community.
Does anyone on the board have any questions? Comments?
No, it's great. It's a
really great.
fantastic arrangement, I think. So great. to see everybody
Friendly to
there.
senior citizens, too. Just the right size hill for an old time.
For beginners and seniors and everything in the middle.
Great. Does anyone in the public have any questions or comments? Would somebody like to make a motion?
Find it.
We'll make Zach's first meeting a good one. So.
I told him he'd be easy on that.
Just this time.
Just this time, so watch out.
I move that we approve an agreement with Living Memorial Park Snow Sports Incorporated as presented.
We have a motion to approve an agreement with Living Memorial Park Snow Sports. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Zach, and thank everybody on your committee, too, because we know
It's a pleasure.
it's a labor of love.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol's up again, and this time it's about a grant for the disc golf course improvements.
Get a changing seat here.
Oh, someone new is coming.
The department wears many different hats with many different organizations, and it's been a pleasure the last several years working with Rob and members of both the noontime and morning Rotary Club to have an addition at Living Memorial, and that was, 3 years ago? About 3?
Yeah.
We put in a disc golf course, and that was all done, again, by volunteers and fundraising efforts that the Rotary Club, both Rotary Clubs came together and had this nice addition to Living Memorial. Started out as a 13-hole, a nice round number, 13-hole golf course, with the plan that it would expand onto 8, and everything is done through volunteers from, setting the course. Rob and friends have, helped design the course. Members of the Rotary Club help build the tees. Park maintenance staff, they would do a lot of the heavy lifting, Rob and his crew, but we would come along, and if there was, hey, there's a pile of this that needs to be moved, or we need a little of this, we would work in conjunction with them. So what they're trying to do is just to bring the course from bringing it to the next level, to make some improvements. In order to do that, they'd like to apply for a $9,000 grant through the state of Vermont with the Buildings and Communities Grant through the Department of Buildings and Grounds. So that's what we're here before you this evening. Rob is here to answer any how-tos and how-not-tos that have been going on with the course. But I think this is a nice partnership that we have with Rotary.
I have to admit, I did not, until I saw this, even know that there was a disc golf course up there, so it's really exciting.
Yeah, it's been very, they've had a tournament every year for the past 3 years, and 2 years, this, third one to come up this year. It's just a totally different component to Living Memorial, and where the hill is pretty used quite a bit in the winter months, this gets people out using the hill in the summer months,
Yeah.
with the golf course.
Were you guys behind the social media marketing with Joe? Wasn't that with Joe Heslin? That was hilarious. Nice job. I really enjoyed every one of those videos. Every time I saw a new one come out, I watched it. That was fantastic. Well done.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I'm just ashamed I haven't been out there yet. I know we've talked about it a couple times.
I thought you would have been.
Yeah.
A little busy.
But it seems like a great idea to both expand the number of holes or baskets and to upgrade the quality, right?
Right.
Yeah. It's a great idea.
Right on.
Does anyone in the public have any questions about the disc golf course grant? Seeing none, would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve an application from the Recreation and Parks Department on behalf of Brattleboro's Rotary Clubs to apply for a $9,000 building communities grant from the Vermont Department of Buildings and Grounds to pay for improvements to the disc golf facility at Living Memorial Park.
Great, we have a motion to approve an application from the Recreation and Parks Department for a building communities grant. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Have fun.
Those videos are hilarious. I'm going to send you some. Did you see any of those
I'm not
things?
sure. Maybe one of them.
Next up is Hinesburg Road Grants. And we have Steve Barrett here.
Good evening.
Fill us in.
I'm here to ask the board to accept and appropriate 2 grants from the Vermont Agency of Transportation. The first one is a Class 2 roadway paving grant for $78,400 to pay for overlay of new pavement on Hinesburg Road. The grant requires a 20% local match. The second grant is a structures grant, and structures in this application is really a large culvert. It's a little smaller than a bridge and a little larger than a culvert. And that grant is for $175,000 to pay for a hydraulic study, an engineering, and replacement of the box culvert on Hinesburg Road. And that requires a 10% local match. And both the matches will come out of the Capital Road Improvement Program that's already been approved by the board.
That's a question. Does anyone on the board have any questions about this?
No, seems like a good idea.
Yeah, we'll fix it. Anyone in the public have any comments or questions about the Hinesburg Road? All right, so you need us to do 2 motions.
That's correct.
One's for 78 and one's for 175. Would someone like to make the first one for the $78,400?
I'll make that one. I move to accept and appropriate a Class 2 roadway paving grant from the Vermont Agency of Transportation in the amount of $78,400 to pay for overlay of new pavement on Hinesburg Road.
We have a motion to accept and appropriate a Class 2 roadway paving grant from Vermont AOT in the amount of $78,400. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Somebody like to make a motion to accept the 175?
I'll make a motion to accept and appropriate a structures grant from the Agency of Transportation in the amount of $175,000 to pay for the hydraulic study, engineering, and replacement of a box culvert on Hinesburg Road.
We have a motion to accept and appropriate a structures grant from AOT in the amount of $175,000. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Steve.
One more item.
Got one more.
So the last item I have before you tonight is capital paving bids.
Yep.
And
right.
we received the following bids from Lane Construction, Northfield, Mass, for $266,774, and Johnson's Asphalt Paving from Northfield, Mass. I noticed a typo. It said in your memo Northfield, Vermont, but it's actually Northfield, Mass, for $259,179.51. Vermont Roadworks from Brattleboro, Vermont, $232,496.34. Basin Brothers from Westminster, Vermont, $192,839.50. And the low bid of Mitchell Sand and Gravel from Winchester, New Hampshire for $189,644.95. And we are recommending that we accept the low bid from Mitchell Sand and Gravel for $189,644.95 for the summer paving. And I will throw in that the roads that we're looking at, so the public knows, Hinesburg Road, which you heard earlier, the grant that we get will supplement these bids. Also, Green Meadow, Jenny Lane, Glen Street, and Maple Street. And those are the lucky recipients of the paving roads.
Do you always, has Mitchell Sand and Gravel been used before?
Yes, they have. We've used all these contractors. We found that these were very competitive bids, and we're pretty happy with this price. So, and we've done work with all these vendors, and we'll continue to in the future.
Does anyone on the board have any questions? Does anyone in the public have any comments or questions about the paving money? No. Would somebody like to make a motion to accept or to award the bids?
Okay.
Or the bid?
I approve, wait a minute. That's body cameras. I move that we award a bid for the 2018 summer paving project to Mitchell Sand and Gravel in the amount of $189,644.95.
We have a motion to award the bid for the 2018 summer paving projects to Mitchell Sand and Gravel. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Now, thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Next up, we'll have a conversation with the police department about purchasing body-worn cameras. Hello.
Good evening. I'm sure you all have our memo, and basically I would like to discuss the purchase of some body-worn cameras for the patrol officers down at the police department. We initially were looking at body-worn cameras back 2014, 2015 time span, and just recently, well, last capital improvement plan, it was approved for $15,000. We found that at $15,000 5 years ago, pretty much would have just purchased the cameras. We really weren't aware of the depth of the program and how far that program has progressed nationally with departments that have purchased those. So Captain Kerrigan and Lieutenant Perkins did a very in-depth research and evaluation program for the body-worn cameras. It is a piece of equipment that is very much needed and welcomed at the department by all the officers. It's going to increase our transparency, improve our delivery services, enhance community relations, improve evidence collection and the prosecution of cases, and enhance officer and performance and improvement tools for our monthly counselings. So they evaluated 3 companies that did body cameras, and the one that stood out head and shoulders above everybody else was Axion. And with Axion, they were willing to work with us because, like I said earlier, the $15,000 just barely scratched the surface for a full program on how to deploy body cameras. And Axion was willing to work with us within our budget on capital plans and put us on like a 5-year payment plan. The reason we really recommend the Axion with the technology assurance program is we get our initial cameras, all the hardware, all the software. At the 2.5-year mark, we get issued all new cameras and hardware. So we get all the technology update, all the support, and then at year 5, we also get issued all new hardware and all technology updates. So it's really a 5-year program. And I'm sure everybody realizes within 5 years, just the leaps and bounds we have seen in body cameras in the programs in the last 5 years, that's pretty much an insurance that we're still going to have the latest and greatest technology within our program. In addition to the hardware and software, they also have a evidence.com, which is basically a storage and administrative software on how you can deal with the footage from your body cams. And for a chief, that in itself is so important. We would have to literally hire a person to dedicate them to download all the videos, do the redaction in it. This program has automatic face recognition redaction, so if there was a child that got videotaped, we can just take that child, put a box around their face, and anywhere in that video where that child's face appears, it would be pixeled over. Where if we did that, we would actually have to buy the hardware, the software, and then assign and train a personnel to do that. So we pretty much would have to dedicate an officer full-time to this program. Through Axion with their TAP, their assurance program, those services are available to us. Also, we, through their program, will be able to give access to various agencies that require access to those videos, such as the state's attorney's office. We're no longer downloading things on CDs, DVDs, thumb drives, things of that nature. We can give them access to go into evidence.com and get out certain cases that they require for prosecution. And not only that, other PDs, whoever we desire, we can give access to. Same thing with request for public records. We've got to understand that that now is part of request for public records. So, you know, we're still not going to get away from having an officer sit down and actually redact certain things. However, it's going to be a lot easier under the TAP program. They pretty much broke it down into a 5-year financial plan for us, and they're willing to wait. Since we already have done the fiscal year and we explained that to them, they pretty much said no problem. Starting next July, when you do your new operating budget, if it's approved, then you can put that in your operating budget, and we'll just kick off from this point. However, we will give you the software, well, we will start you with the software and the hardware as soon as it's approved. So great company to work with. They're the leading edge across the nation in this technology. We've talked to numerous PDs that have them, and I can let Captain Kerrigan go into more detail, but I haven't heard anyone complain about their services, their technical support, or the hardware. Even with the assurance program, if anything breaks, it's replaced. So not only do we get the updates along the way in between the year, the 2.5 and the 5-year, if cameras break, systems crash, things of that nature, we get replacements. So they really stand behind their product and their service support. And that's why I strongly recommend that we go with the Axion with the 5-year TAP program. You have anything you want to?
No, I'm happy to answer any questions that come up related to it, but no, I think you covered
I
it.
have a question about the training.
Sure.
Is there going to be additional costs, or have you looked at this program, pretty familiar with it, that's fairly easy to use, and people?
They fly someone out from California, Arizona. They fly an individual out from Arizona, and it's 2 days?
I think it's a day.
A day?
Yeah.
But they will fly an individual out to basically set everything up with us and go through all the nuts and bolts and things of that nature. So their training program falls into that.
Have them come up in the winter and we'll change the climate for them.
See if they, yeah.
Now, how many cameras are you getting?
18.
And will everybody when they're out be wearing them? Or is there a plan for that yet?
Yes, we're in the process of working on model policies. We bought, once you buy, with the amount that we're buying 18, so we get 2 free. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So we'll actually have 20.
So we'll actually have 20. That won't give everybody one if we were fully staffed, but we're not fully staffed. So it will definitely give everyone one that we currently have on our staff. And our purpose is, as we get fully staffed, we will purchase more cameras through our operating budget.
So everybody has to have their own camera. You can't, like, if Brandy's on and I'm off, she can't be using my camera?
That is, they technically can do that. However, now you're getting into a lot more time and energy and researching who did what, on what day, on what incident, and things of that nature. If it's Fitzgerald, we go to Fitzgerald's camera, we download Thursday, and it's there. We're not looking through, numerous cameras to find out who had what by hot racking them. We did look at that to see if it would be beneficial financially, and it really wouldn't have, operationally, it wouldn't have been advantageous.
So it's saved it's saved in the cameras, and then you have to download it, or is it automatically sent over?
It's downloaded to evidence.com, right?
Yes, so I can kind of speak to both of those things. So we're trying to maximize, one of the things we're trying to do with this program is maximize officers' time on the road and minimize the amount of time they have processing videos and organizing videos and that sort of thing. And everybody having their own camera allows a lot more accountability for whose videos belong to who. And what it allows an officer to do is they just snap their camera off at the end of a shift and put it in these big docking stations, they call them, has slots. You stick it in there, it downloads it, or I guess uploads it to evidence.com and charges the camera at the same time. If we had one camera that was used by 3 or 4 officers, what that officer would have to do is take it and plug it in and then manually go and classify each one of his videos, which could be dozens of videos per shift. So he'd have to go in and classify all of the videos that he has. If they just plug it into the charger and it's their own dedicated camera, then it will put them all in, it will upload them all, and it'll classify it by who the officer is, the time of day. There's even a GPS feature in the cameras as well. And it'll allow, when officers need to search for videos, they can search by officer, by date and time. I mean, there are just a tremendous number of different ways they can search. It'll save time having everybody have their own.
A lot of the bugs have been worked out by other people.
Absolutely, yeah. And we spoke to different agencies, as the chief alluded to, that are using various components of the plan that the chief just described. We spoke to, there's a Vermont agency that's using all of the same suite of features that we want to purchase. There's an agency that's not using evidence.com. They're managing their own data, and it's working, but it's very labor intensive. And then there's another agency that's using evidence.com, but not the tap feature, and they're having some equipment issues. So we were able to speak to a variety of different departments that are using different pieces of it.
Now, are the cameras going to be on all the time?
Good question. And we anticipated that question. They will be on when you are doing law enforcement activity. So law enforcement action. When you take law enforcement action, yes, they will be on. If they're walking downtown and they come up and they just have a conversation with you, or they go in and have a cup of coffee, no, they will not be on. But they're going to be obviously officers' discretion, where that non-traditional friendly encounter may be leading to something that they would have to take law enforcement action, then they would be required to turn it on. I'll be honest with you, we haven't nailed down the policy from nuts to bolts yet. We still have to run it by Bob Fisher. We want to make sure that everything is fine in that aspect. But that is a huge concern of communities across the nation, and IACP's best policy practices That's what they came up with. If you're doing law enforcement activity or action, then it should be on. If you're not doing law enforcement activity, it shouldn't be on. So there's a lot we're going to look into. In Vermont, do we have to let you know
That's what I wondered.
that we're recording? We're looking in all of the best practices. We're going to get with VLCT for policies. We're going to go with the Vermont Police Academy, look at their policies. They all put out model policies, best practices, recommendations. IACP, COPS, your community-oriented policing. There's just a treasure trove of these organizations through trial and error and litigation have come up with these best practices, and we're going to take them and tailor it to what's best for our community, is what we're going to do, and run it by Attorney Fisher.
From a technical standpoint, this makes a lot of sense with the 2 and 5 year, or 2.5 and 5 year switch outs, and
Definitely.
and the help with evidence.com and the redacting with all of that just makes a lot of sense.
It does, yep.
Tim, I stole your question. Do you have another one?
Well, just one more. I mean, I'm super happy that you're embracing it. I'm kind of curious how, and you don't have to comment on it because it hasn't happened yet, but if all the troops, so to speak, are really on board with it, as much as the leadership obviously is, I'd be curious about that. And just from a citizen perspective of just making sure that there's privacy protections, in other words. If you're pretty much always on, which is sort of the point when you're doing police activities, in a domestic violence situation, you wouldn't want people to think that, you know, this private situation potentially is going to be out there somehow. So I just want to, you know, in the process of letting everybody know about it, make sure that personal privacy is respected. So.
Absolutely, and I would like to comment on what the troops think about it. They're behind it just as much as we are.
Great.
And that's just not me saying that, because you know, we've used cruiser cameras for so long, and they have found out the value in cruiser cameras, from evidence gathering to if there was any discrepancy in statements of people or what we did or what we didn't do, and it's hard to argue when you're looking at it on the screen. So they're welcoming it. They need it. And I couldn't agree with you more with the privacy aspect. That's why the redaction program within the software is so important, and consulting with Attorney Fisher on exactly what we're looking for. Because you're right, you go into a domestic situation, that's personal, and we really have to be aware of that.
Great. Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions? Does anyone in the public have any questions or comments on the body-worn police cameras? Seeing none, does somebody want to make a motion?
Glasses are blurry. Yeah, where's that? Okay, I move.
Top of page 3.
I see that. Yeah. I move to approve entering into an agreement with Axon in the amount of $64,196 to purchase hardware, software, and a technological assurance plan to equip the police department's patrol division with body-worn cameras.
We have a motion to enter an agreement with Axon to purchase body-worn cameras for the police department. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. Now we're talking about a police cruiser.
CAS.
Christmas in July.
The municipal council.
The next item I'd like to talk with you about is the cruiser replacement that was approved in the capital improvement plan for FY19. We're doing this a little bit different this time, simply because when we contacted Formula Ford, they advised us that they're taking limited numbers on 2019 police cruiser models, simply because they haven't raised the rates or their prices in a very long time, a couple years, and that prices are going to go higher. So they strongly advise that if we were going to buy 2019 vehicles, that we should get it in while they're still accepting orders. Normally, when we come to the board with a cruiser, we come with the price of the cruiser from the state bid and the opening from the upfit bids, the lights, the markings, the MDTs, the computers, everything. So we have a fully functional cruiser. We're doing it a little bit different this time because we didn't have time to go out and do the upfit bid. So what we're asking the board is for tonight to give us approval to buy the cruisers, which is a known price. And the prices that are in my memo are, nothing will be higher than that price for the cost of the cruiser. As a matter of fact, they will probably be a little bit lower because we haven't got trade-in value yet for the cruisers we're going to give them. So if anything, they're going to be lower than the state bid price that's in the memo. And then we will do the upfits as time permits. That's not time sensitive. However, the purchase of the cruisers are. And in our research for cruisers, I'm happy to report that Ford is making great strides going towards a hybrid cruiser. So they're starting off real small, and we need a cruiser that's big enough to handle the power load, plus have room for all our equipment and riders in the back and things of that nature. So it's on the horizon, and like I say, I was very encouraged to see that, and that is something we most definitely will explore more in depth as they get greater and greater in production and perfect it more, because most of it was the power draw on the cruisers. All the power that we need. They're constantly running. We have radios, computers, lights, and power was the main issue. And they're really starting to come great strides in developing a hybrid, where when the cruiser's parked, it can run off of the hybrid battery, vice having the actual engine happen to be running. So we're keeping an eye on that. I know that's a concern for a lot of the citizens in this community, and it's not going unnoticed by us. So hopefully in 2 or 3 years from now, they have it perfected where we can get a pursuit rated cruiser and save on gas money and help the environment at the same time. But I kind of got off track there.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for keeping that on your radar,
Oh, yeah.
so to speak.
But that's what we're looking at. We're looking at to buy 2 Ford Explorer SUVs, and those will be cruisers, and the Tahoe, which is the major incident command vehicle that's going to replace the one that has currently been deadlined for the last 18 months. Total cost of the vehicles is $94,684, and once again, I would like to say that that is maximum price. It most likely will be several $1,000s cheaper than that once we get the dealership to give us a value of our trade-in of our 2 cruisers plus the Suburban.
And in the end, when it's all outfitted, it won't cost more than $146,000?
That is correct, with the upfits and everything.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Yeah, upfit, not outfit.
Depends
Gotta
on
get
how
my
you look at
lingo
it.
right.
Yeah, horses get outfitted, yeah.
Does anyone on the board have any questions?
Nope, answered them all.
Does anyone in the public have any questions about the 2 cruisers in command?
I have a quick question. Sure. I noticed you're going from basically sedans to SUVs. Is that more like, or is that not the case? The Impala, is that a sedan?
Chevy
Yeah.
Impala.
Yes, I see where you're at. That is correct.
And I
SUVs.
assume that's for our winters and
Exactly.
a little more versatility with a hatchback, like. It
Plus-
seems more practical for here, is what I'm saying. I'm
I
saying
couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
It is. It's better. It has more room. because right now we're putting in the center consoles computer stations with big arms that reach out. So your front seat, passenger seat, like in your sedans, are pretty much half taken with equipment. So we're finding with the SUVs, not only can we use them year-round, no matter what the weather, and you know, when people have snow days, they're told to stay home. I'm calling officers in, you know, so we need vehicles that can be out there on the road. We're finding the SUVs meet that need very well.
Makes sense.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve purchase of 2 police cruisers in the amount of $28,912 each, and a major incident command vehicle in the amount of $36,824, using the state of Vermont's contract with Formula Ford for the purchase of the vehicles.
We have a motion to approve the purchase of 2 police cruisers and a major incident command vehicle. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is renaming, or naming, not renaming, naming a new private road. And we'll let the town manager explain this one.
Thank you. So, under the E911 system, the state occasionally identifies situations that they feel we need to address so that there's greater clarity for the public safety personnel who respond to emergency calls. And they've recently identified the Colonial Hotel buildings that are behind the Tavern Restaurant on Putney Road as being such a location. Historically, those have all been under one address that was a Putney Road address, and then it was just described to the responding personnel which building the emergency was in. The state has advised us that each building needs to have a distinct address. The staff looked at whether that distinct address could be provided with a different Putney Road number for each different building, and that wasn't possible because of the proximity of the Tavern Restaurant and the commercial building that's just to the north there. So instead, what's recommended is the creation of a private road, which is now a driveway, but to designate that as a private road under the name of Colonial Drive. And so we're recommending that you approve that designation.
Now, is the Tavern and the Colonial still going to be considered on Putney Road?
Yes, so the office for the hotel and the Tavern Restaurant are still going to retain their existing Putney Road address.
Yeah.
It's just the buildings that are out behind that are going to be on Colonial Drive.
And that's only really, as you said, for emergency personnel.
That's correct. Yeah.
Since those are hotel buildings.
Exactly. They're not receiving mail or anything like that.
Yeah.
It would have been more fun if we threw out just made up names or had some kind of a poll or trivia, but whatever.
Sorry to be boring, but that's what we brought
It
you.
could have been True Value. Would somebody, or does anyone have any questions about that? Would someone like to make a motion?
Your turn, my turn. Did you?
It's your turn.
My
We're taking turn.
I wasn't paying attention. I move that we approve the name of Colonial Drive for the access road from Putney Road to the Colonial Motel Complex as presented.
We have a motion to approve the name of Colonial Drive for the access road, Putney Road, into the Colonial Motel Complex. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries 4-0. All right, now we have, this is a Tim's thing. Wessel thing, the election right procedures. And this is something that came up, gosh, when was it? A while back, that you were wondering, it was around the election time, because you were wondering how write-ins happen and why they happen the way they happen.
Hillary, thankfully, is anticipating. She will be interrogated.
If she wishes to be.
That's right. Well, this has been sort of under my crow, as the old folks say, for quite a while. And it's something that was changed in our ordinances just in 2011, so in recent Brattleboro history. And what it is a requirement that write-in candidates register to be write-in candidates. Register is the proper term?
Declare.
Declare, okay. Either verbally, it's very easy to do, either verbally or by writing or
by pigeon.
yeah, exactly.
Preferably.
And to me, it feels like the procedure is going against the spirit of write-ins, period, where someone feels like if they have that box in front of them, they have the ability to write someone in. Sometimes, as Annette Cappy had pointed out in some of the materials that we've been reading, even without the knowledge or permission of the person who's being written in, drafted somebody to serve, for instance. But I think the spirit of writing in somebody shouldn't be obstructed by this requirement, basically. And my biggest pet peeve with the requirement is when it comes to absentee and or early voting. Because when you're early voting, you don't really know if your desired candidate will be following the procedures correctly. So you could be voting for somebody who will not be a qualified candidate on the day of the election day. I feel that that's a little undemocratic because it's basically a restriction that I feel is unnecessary. And I kind of understand some of the arguments for having the restriction. They seem to me more towards convenience than anything else. And I'm not sure how other people want to chime in, but the essence of my argument is that essentially for people voting early, it can either lessen the chances of their vote counting, or you might think, well, I don't know for sure that this person is going to be qualified correctly, so therefore I'll vote for the safer candidate who's actually appearing on the ballot. Either way, I just feel like it's an odd restriction for a write-in, and it sort of goes against the spirit of write-in candidates. And if it results in a slightly more messy process, I think democracy is messy, and I don't really feel that there should be any restriction, which is not, and correct me if I'm wrong, really that common in the United States or anything. And this is sort of a time for me, I feel like nationally and even internationally, there's been a lot of restrictions put on voting. There's been a lot of controversy about people's rights to vote being infringed in one way or another. I don't like the optics, if nothing else, of some rights possibly being infringed when it comes to a write-in candidate in our elections. So that's my sort of unwritten, unthought out, but that's the basic bullet points of what my argument is in considering repealing this portion. And I'll have to defer to you, possibly letting me know what the process would be. Sure. If we can come to some sort of agreement, but that's down the road.
But it would require a charter change.
That's correct. If the board does decide to proceed with eliminating this requirement for write-in, then it would require changing the charter, so that would go, your action would then go to town meeting, and then the town meeting action would be subject to approval of the state legislature. It would take a while to make the change, but the question before you tonight would be, do you want to start down that road?
Now, Hillary, do you want to, I know you weren't the town clerk when this came up, so I don't know if you want to give us your perspective on this whole thing.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I was not the town clerk, and I haven't experienced an election yet that hasn't gone that way, because we've only done our local elections since I've been here. We haven't done a statewide election yet. And in the statewide elections, we count all write-ins. They don't have to declare. It's only for local elections that that's the case. So from my perspective, I hear what you're saying, and I've had a couple of people in my year and a half here sort of come to me and question whether or not this process is a democratic process. And I think that where Annette was coming from and pushing for this, and I agree, is sure there's convenience to it and it takes away some of the messiness with counting, but it really comes down to really being able to understand the voter's intent, which is the goal behind it. Because whether this is part of our charter or not, state statute says that in order for somebody to become an officer, they need to get the same number of votes that they would petition signatures to get on the ballot. So to become a select board member, they would need to get 30 votes. To become a town meeting member, they would need to get 10 votes, because that's the number of petition signatures they would need to get on the ballot in the first place. So it prevents that loophole of somebody saying, oh, I'm not going to bother doing the petition, and I'll just put myself as a write-in, get 2 votes, and get on. And so I think that that's one aspect that people don't understand, is they think, okay, well, if I have to declare write-in and I haven't gotten the number of votes, there's just sort of some mix-up with that. And with this, I feel like Annette laid it out, I think, very clearly in the memo that she drafted. There are a couple of different scenarios that it really helps both the candidates as well as the voters in terms of their intent, as well as the counters. So if you have John A. Smith, who decides, hey, I want to be a write-in candidate, and somebody writes in John with an H, A. Smith, somebody writes in John, Jon, somebody writes in Jonathan, somebody writes in J. Smith, somebody writes in Jay Smith, somebody writes in Alan Smith, because John actually goes by Alan. The counters don't know that those are all the same person, and so they have to count them all differently. And if John declares that he wants to be a write-in candidate, then the counters can say, okay, all of these people are likely, the intent of the voters are likely all for the same person, and he got his 30 votes, whereas he wouldn't have if they were all separated. Another scenario is if you have John A. Smith and John A. Smith Jr., father and son, both living in the same household, right? How do you know what the voter's intent was? How do you know who actually got elected if one of them didn't declare? Another scenario would be John A. Smith gets elected. He had no desire to be elected. This was not something that he ever wanted to do. But Barbara Jones did. So John A. Smith gets 32 votes, and Barbara Jones gets 31 votes. John A. Smith is elected to select board. He says, you know what? I have no desire to do that. I'm resigning. He resigns. Select board member then gets appointed. It doesn't automatically go to the next vote getter. So Barbara should have been elected in that case, but she wasn't. And so somebody's appointed that may or may not be Barbara. So in that situation, it really helps identify the voter intent. When it comes to that early voting process, which I hear you saying, I mean, I've said there are many reasons why I choose to vote on election day. One is because I like voting on election day. I like being a part of it. One is because I like for my kids to come on election day and vote with me. I think that's really important. But another reason is because I want to know who my write-in candidates are, who my potential write-in candidates are. So I choose to wait. In the memo that Annette drafted, I believe it said research indicates that 98% of local write-in votes seldom receive more than 1 or 2 votes. So if somebody is energized even at the last minute and says, you know what, I want to do this, and it's 6:59 on election day, they can come to me or any one of the assistant clerks. They can call us They can email us, they can write us a letter, they can slip a note under the door, they can come to us physically on election day. They just have to declare in some way that they want to be a write-in candidate. So that barrier, I don't really view it as a barrier. I view it as they just need to voice their intent to do it. Chances are they are going to be energized if they're getting 10 plus votes. I don't see a time when 10 people are randomly voting for the same person if that person is not energized in some way, unless that person is being drafted without them knowing. And the likelihood of somebody being drafted without them knowing, and then if they want to do it, for them not to be able to say, hey, I want to do this, is not likely. And so I think this policy makes sense. I think it really helps with voter intent. And it will help get people elected who want to be elected. I know that the director of the elections division at Secretary of State supports this. I went to a meeting when I first started, and I heard the Secretary of State's office talking about wanting to figure out if this was something that they could bring statewide. So it would come to all elections. I don't know where they're at with it right now. I don't know if it's something they're moving forward with, but it's something that they voiced interest in and they think makes a lot of sense. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do you want to? I'd like to hear from you again.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought this was like a thing.
No, that's great. I don't want to turn it into sort of a point-counterpoint thing.
Yeah.
But I think because I have sort of counterpoints to all of Annette's, I don't know if it's fair because she wrote this many years ago and she's not here. But I think rather than say that, I think I'm just going to return to the basic idea of when you go into a voting booth and you see, your vote for two is common, right? And you see 5 names, that'd be wonderful. We often only see 2 or 1. And you have that space down there or write in your alternative. I see that as an invitation to a possibility, regardless of, and one of the points made in here that it's very unusual for a write-in candidate to even win an election because they don't meet that 10 vote for the lower, for a town meeting rep or 30 for somebody like on the select board. But to make that argument to me feels like you're making an argument that you don't have a right to vote for someone who's not going to win, which really spooks me because I don't like that argument that says that you should only vote for a viable candidate, because who's to decide who a viable candidate is except the person who's in that booth. So bringing it back to my original point, it really is for me, it feels like, if not in practice, sort of an intellectual violation of the idea of the write-in candidate.
And if I can just,
Okay.
again, I hear where you're coming from, and I think that people still have a right to write in whoever they want. Mm-hmm. They still have that right. It's not taking away their right. I mean, somebody can still write in Mickey Mouse, but state statute says we don't have to record or count Mickey Mouse. They can still write in Mickey Mouse if they want.
Right, but if they don't appear on your list of official, approved, registered, using different declared candidates, then their vote literally will not count, right?
That vote will not be counted, correct.
So that's the essence of my issue with it.
I have a question. On the second page, where it discusses if a write-in candidate, you were saying like wins, Barbara Jones should have won because she actually wanted it, but this dude won and he didn't want it. Is it state statute that it gets passed to the next highest vote getter, or is that a local thing?
It's not.
I mean, I'm sorry, is it state statute that it does not get passed to the next highest vote getter? Is that because we don't do ranked voting?
Correct.
Right, and that's a state thing. What's it called? Like anecdotally, I wondered, it might be likely that Barbara would be appointed because everybody knew she wanted it and she was next. But, I hear that there's also a risk that there wouldn't be. That wouldn't be. I agree with Tim. I agree that like one of the things that Vermont has that's really special is, like town meeting day. I know we have our own little version of that, but like that excitement of people coming together and like talking politics in various hallways and somebody at the last minute being like, I'm going to do it. And I hear what you're saying is that person just needs to walk into this room where voter's taking place and say to you, I'm going to do it. I hear you both, so I'm having a tricky time because the spirit of democracy and Vermont's specific political engagement at the grassroots level is really important to me. And it doesn't make me feel good to have something in our charter that feels restrictive, even though I hear what you're saying that it can be as informal as a, hey, Hill, I'm doing this. I hear that too, so I'm feeling stuck.
Can I just add one thing, just to throw it on a more positive spin? I'd like to say that the posting of candidates' declared intent, something that was close, right? Is a wonderful idea.
In the hallway?
Yeah,
Yeah, I like
because
that
someone
too.
who's really not happy with all of the pre-printed can go and look, and I've done that myself. I might consider them. So that's a wonderful thing and something that we should have, by all means.
Great.
But I would say just eliminate the other part because that's a wonderful service that will encourage democracy, encourage voters to think outside the box if they go that way. But why have the requirement for it? It just doesn't feel like it's too much. It feels too much like it's trying to make it slightly less messy, especially when you say, forgive me, you said that during national elections we don't have this requirement.
Well, because we're dealing with state and federal, and because that's not a state or federal law, we can't say, okay, we're only going to count these people and not these when all the other places are counting them.
Right.
So we can only do it locally because it's in our charter. And just to touch on your statement about the list of declared write-ins outside, as declared write-ins come in prior to Election Day, I have the warning posted outside on the bulletin board outside of our office, and there's a declared write-in sheet there, and I post them there as well. So if somebody has declared to date, I will go and write it in, and if people ask when they come in to vote early, has anybody declared that they want to be a write-in yet in my district, I'll direct them there. They'll leave their ballot with me, and they can go vote.
And it's run so well. I mean, this is not to be construed as any criticism of the way the office is, your office is running things, and it's done very well. I just feel like it's a little bit of a weird little thing that we do that not many other people do, and I'd hate for this example to go to the state, to be honest with you. I
have a question about that. What if, so I noticed something kind of struck my interest when you said, we can't do it because it's not a state and federal requirement on those level elections. And then earlier you had said the state has looked at this model. I mean, what about saying something like, we take it out of the charter, and if it becomes a state thing, it becomes a state thing, and we have to follow it anyways under Dylan's rules. But it's like, why are we not in line with what the rest of the state does? I guess that was a backwards way of me saying, well, if the state's not doing it, why are we not in line with them? And then if they like the program as it's drafted, then we end up doing it that way anyways. Like if they someday 2 years down the road say, yep, this is the new law we're saying statewide, then darn, that's the new law we're saying statewide. But
I think you might have been, correct me if I'm wrong, you might have been implying that the state was perhaps saying that it's a good idea and they might want to pick that up.
That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is,
I'd rather not be the innovator of this idea, which I think is a bad one.
but they already have the idea. So what I'm saying is, to take it out as you are hoping we might vote to do would actually bring us in line with the state. And if the state chooses to implement something like this down the road, for better or for worse, then
Yeah. No, I see what you're
look
saying.
at it again.
And I'll just sort of insert there, because it's one final little point, is that when you look at the actual minutes from when it was voted on, it's not a slam dunk with the votes. It's 55 in favor and 33 opposed.
Yeah.
And I assume this was a special town meeting.
It was,
happened
'cause
in
that's-
January.
Yeah.
So, and it's towards the end of the day, and we all know what happens towards the end of the day. There's a lot of frustrating, standing voice votes that perhaps aren't thought through very well. I would love to give town meeting another chance to think this through.
I mean, that's what town meeting's for.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a question that this doesn't go either way on this, but are we the only town that does this, or are there other towns that do this? Do we know?
I don't know the answer
Okay.
to that.
Okay.
It is what town meeting's for, though.
Yeah.
Is to look at stuff like this. And in this time where people, democracy is kind of on the hot seat, maybe our town reps might want to take a look at this.
So, how does the chair prefer we proceed? Should we go home and think about it and bring it up under old business? Would you like a vote? Or?
Well, I mean, what we'd have to do, I'm assuming the way it went the last time is it does go to town meeting and then it has to go to the legislature.
Right.
So it would have to be on the town meeting warning. Was it in the warning? Yeah.
Yeah.
For next year.
Right. We would confer with Bob Fisher to see if there's any other action you need to take that's preliminary to that, but I don't know of an additional action you'd have to take. So at minimum, it would be when we bring you the warning, the proposed warning next January, it would be on that for you to make it an item for discussion and action at next year's town meeting.
Is there a way for us to be between now and when you would bring it back? If I'm hearing correctly, though, what you're saying is there wouldn't be action in between now and then?
I don't believe that additional action will be required by the select board until you actually place it on the warning, but we would just double check that and make sure that that's true. If there was an interim step involved, then we would bring it to you for the interim step.
Is there a way to talk to a rep who has the full rep email list and see if there's even interest in having it on the warning?
Well,
No, I didn't know. I just checking. Just checking.
From an open
Yeah,
meetings
can't
law
do that. Okay.
perspective, you
Yeah.
can't really run a poll like that.
Right. All right. I mean,
But you can do it on Facebook.
no.
Remember that?
See, notice I didn't even say that.
And I think, because Hillary's here, and this is kind of a weird situation, that you may have a select board asking for something that the town clerk may get up at a town meeting and say, please don't do. You know what I mean? I think because everybody has to hear all sides of this. So I just want you to feel comfortable knowing if this is something that goes forward, just as Annette did, because she came to the info meeting and to the town meeting and explained why she thought this was good. You're not prohibited from coming in and saying, this is why it should stay this way. You know what I mean? I think that that's what's important to this whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
Is that everybody gets it laid out.
And you're allowed to change your mind.
Both ways.
Yeah.
As are you.
Well played.
Love it.
So maybe what we need to do is have Peter confer with Bob Fisher, figure out what has to happen, and then we can, because we're going to have to, I'm assuming, vote to put it on the
Absolutely.
So then we'll have more discussions about it when we get closer about what we want to put on the town meeting warning, if anything. I'm just putting it all out, you know what I mean? How we decide when we go forward.
I just thinking, because it sounded like, Brandy, it sounded like you wanted to sort of do a temperature check of whether or not this
That
is
is
something
what I
people
wondered,
are even
yeah.
interested in. And
But-
so I wonder if there's a way to, rather than have the board vote to put this on the warning, have somebody circulate a petition and see if you get enough signatures to get it on the ballot.
Whatever Tim wants.
I mean, I'm not suggesting that that's the case. I'm just thinking that that might be an alternative option if you're looking to do a temperature check before putting it on the warning.
Okay. That's for you to decide.
I wouldn't be in favor of that.
Then no.
So, I mean,
But thank you for that.
This is the meat and potatoes
for-
of what town meeting should be doing,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Thank you for that idea in general.
Process in motion. That's what we
Yeah.
do.
Yep.
Yep.
Do the remaining 2 members of this board want to comment at all personally? Or
I tend to be very hesitant to overrule a decision made by a previous town meeting. So again, if the majority of the board wants to do that, it's fine. And I certainly understand the argument. I also understand the practicality of it. So to me, it's a burning non-issue compared to some of the other issues that we really have to deal with. But again, if you want to have another conversation about a town meeting, that's fine. I would much prefer it came as a petition rather than from the select board, but that's even more democratic than us just deciding it's time to question this decision by a previous town meeting.
Yeah, I would just object to your characterization as an overturning, because that wouldn't be our role here at all, I don't think. It would be putting something on the warning for a vote, right?
Which would overturn a previous town meeting vote.
They'd overturn their own.
Which I've made an argument is, it wasn't a slam dunk body decision, perhaps, based on the numbers. But I understand what you're saying.
If I could just make one more comment in response to Brandy's comment earlier, sort of since there was tongue-in-cheek earlier in the meeting. So I heard you say, why should we be different from the state in the way that the state's doing things? And when I think about Brattleboro, we do tend to do things different from the state. I mean,
Fair
we
enough.
have representative town meeting.
Yep.
Very few, if any, other towns have representative town meeting.
Yeah.
I believe it's just us. In terms of our timeline for our tax appeal process. I mean, lots of things that we do are different from the state because we're Brattleboro. We do things different. And so
enough.
I would just throw that on the table.
Right on. Yep.
Okay, so I guess we'll find out from Bob, and then we can have further discussions about what we want to do. Because it may be nice to have Shanta here, because she may have to vote to break a tie.
Okay, so if there is some additional
We don't
action
know that yet, but
that you need to take in the months ahead between now and the warning, we'll bring this back to you sooner. Otherwise, as a group, a complete group of 5, you'll visit this again at the time that you're looking at the warning, and you can decide at that time whether you want to proceed with it or not.
does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Sure.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, very good.
Let me know if there's anything else you need from me in the process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary.
Thanks, Hillary.
Yay, messy.
Ugh, can we skip the next one?
Quick review.
I just always feel like I'm in trouble when we have to do the goals. I don't know why. It's like something in me, like some past life thing. I don't know.
This is just how many, do we do this quarterly or every
yeah,
other
so-
month or something?
May I
Oh, yeah.
introduce? I'd like to say, I think we've evolved with this, and it was just last year that for the first time, one of you said, shouldn't we really be looking at these occasionally throughout the year? And we decided on quarterly. And I think that's really been helpful. We had a good process in prior years. We had some years when other things got in the way and we didn't get many things done on the list, but we got some. We had other years when we got a lot done, even though we weren't looking at it quarterly. But I think it really does help us to keep focused on what progress we're making and what progress we're not making, so that you can continue to provide direction to staff about things that you want us to be, making sure that we're spending time on and moving forward. And so this is the first quarterly report for this particular year. The first quarterly report always has a little less forward progress on it because it took us a little while to get out of the gate and establish the goals. So we've been working on these things for about a month and a half rather than a full quarter. But yet there is some progress to be shown. So quick summary under the financial matters. We did have the first meeting of the HUB committee, if you want to call it that, or coalition. It was not as well attended as we hoped, but substantively it was really good. And what we've agreed between the people who did attend and the Vermont League of Cities and Towns is one of the things that we could have done better in the initial meeting was to have this as part of a larger meeting when there would have been a lot of municipal officials in one place. Instead, we did it as it's a standalone meeting that people would have had to set aside time for and drive to from around the state. And so we intend actually to have 2 follow-ups. We're going to do this fall in October at Town Fair, where there's a broad variety of municipal officials, elected and appointed, who are there. And then a couple of weeks after the Town Fair is the fall meeting of the Vermont Town and City Management Association, which is the professional association of town managers around the state. At each of those 2 meetings, we're going to have a follow-up session to hopefully give this a little bit more momentum and move forward after that with the core group of people who want to be involved in an ongoing hub committee work. And then on the realistic and financially sustainable capital improvement plan, we've begun work at staff level regarding the vehicles and equipment part of this, and we will bring you in the budget process something that meets this, achieves this goal for that part of our capital planning, because that is achievable and it's time that we got to it and got that specific about it. It's going to be harder for us, both at staff level in the first instance and then collectively in your approval of a capital plan to send on to the representative town meeting, harder to reach that same level of both specificity and having it be a financially affordable plan for the projects. There's just so many deferred projects, and those have a tendency to change a little bit more. The priorities shift when something happens and a piece of infrastructure fails when it's not expected to. So it's a lot more predictable with the vehicles and equipment, and it's a lot more manageable because of the smaller dollar amounts involved. So when we get to the budget process this year, we'll present it in a manner that's really clear about how this has come together for vehicles and equipment, how it gives us an example of what we can progress with for projects. But I just want to make sure that you understand that we probably won't have something that is really sort of a finished product that is, truly representing all the different needs and presented to you in a sustainable, financially sustainable sequence of years. And then there's a couple of things there that we've not yet begun to work on this year under the financial part. Under buildings, we have continued to move forward with looking at how we might address the needs here at the municipal center, both to fill the vacant space and to upgrade the facility. And I expect to have something more tangible to report in August, hopefully, about that. Energy efficiency, we are moving forward with implementing the projects that have been previously approved. There's been progress made in hiring a project manager for that, and we are in the process of moving towards actual physical implementation of those previously approved projects at actually several different facilities, 4 or 5 of the town facilities. And we expect that, between what the community brings to us and ideas that you and select board members have and what we bring forward as staff is what we think is the next in line, that additional projects will be considered as part of the capital planning in the FY20 budget process. And I've recently had a meeting with the energy, not the whole energy committee, but a subset of the energy committee members who are particularly interested in the concept of a sustainability officer. I've met with them about what they're looking at regarding alternative ways of approaching that function. And they are going to do some further research as the summer goes along and make a recommendation to us, to you as the board, and to me for consideration in the proposed budget when we get closer to September. We've had a really clear understanding with each other in my communications with them about the difficulty in adding additional staff sort of year after year. It's unusual that we would add staff at all, and we've added the HR person this cycle so that even if there is receptibility or receptiveness to this position for a sustainability officer, it may or may not be one that I feel like I can recommend or you feel like you can embrace. But we'll look at it on its merits as we come along into the process. And they understand that. They actually have a pretty healthy degree of ongoing consideration just within their group of, some would like it to be shaped a little more like this and others would like it to be shaped a little more like that, just in terms of the priorities of what this position would undertake on behalf of the town and the broader community. So it's a really good, healthy conversation that's underway, and I don't really know exactly where it'll land, but we will talk about it some more at budget time. And the other things that are listed here are things that we intend to be working on as the year goes along, but are not yet working on at this time.
And then there's a lot on page.
Oh, whoops.
Diversity and inclusion.
Yes, there sure is.
There's a lot of things.
Yeah, there are, and that's an area, as you know, that we've been really active and are continuing to be really active in a number of different ways. This one in particular, I'd say, represents not just progress that staff has made in carrying out direction from the board, but progress that we're continuing to make in areas where select board members have become very directly involved in the work as well, and that's been really good, I think, in terms of increasing our reach and the connections with different organizations in town and just town government efforts to promote diversity, inclusion, and equity.
Peter, would you say a little bit about the conference you mentioned here, the Vermont Vision for a Multicultural Future? Sure.
So that is organized each year by the Vermont Partnership for Fairness and Diversity, and it is it's something that grew out of the work that's been going on here in Brattleboro. The Vermont Partnership is a statewide organization that advocates for this kind of progress in a lot of different settings, institutional settings and others, across the whole state. And the conference draws people from across the whole state. The organization of the conference initially grew out of the creation of the Community Equity Collaborative here in Brattleboro in response to the racially offensive incidents that occurred at the high school about a decade ago. So it's got its roots right here in town. It's an ongoing support from the Community Equity Collaborative here in town. It's led by Curtis Reed and the Vermont Partnership in the overall creation of the program and organization of the conference. And this year, through our work with the collaborative, I signed the town up to be a sponsor of this conference. We're also going to be having the conference here in Brattleboro this year, which is
That's awesome.
yeah, it moves around the state. It has been nearby as recently as last year. It was at the Putney School, but it's actually going to be at SIT right here in Brattleboro this year.
Keep that on our radar. I'd like to have that on my radar.
Does anyone else have any other questions or comments about the goals?
That wasn't as bad as I thought. I don't. And I think it might have been me that wanted the quarterly review too. That seems like something I would have said.
It does.
It does.
Well, thanks to the town staff for helping us achieve goals.
Yes, thank you very much.
Kate, there was one thing I would say. I think about a month ago, or a little bit more than a month ago, I looked at a few agendas to figure out when it was. I think it was when we were talking about the utility fund and having to have a new 5-year plan and what to do with the financing. We saw the moving spreadsheet, and then with the possible upgrade with the Vermont Culture, the Culture Made Vermont project and federal money and state money. And it struck me that there was an incredible amount of stuff on Peter's plate. And we were talking, as we do always, about, gee, we could use this information and that information in this report. And a couple days later, I found myself just thinking about the overload potential and how thorough we are and how complete we are and how demanding we are to have all the information, not just the information, but all different perspectives on it, and then a recommendation as well to defend and all these things. And so I made a little list of things that came to mind just then. And then, of course, a month later I misplaced it. Peter recommended I not put it on the next agenda, but wait until the goals conversation came up. And so here it is. So I just wanted to kind of...
Did you find the list?
Well, I found the agenda that had 2 or 3 things that we immediately pushed over, and they were coming anyway, some of them, but just for how this year has been and how recent times have been, the kinds of things that we've been dealing with, outside, and particularly Peter, but outside of just the business of the town, keeping everything running. I mean, there's obviously the municipal center that we know that's going on, and the Hub Towns meeting, which is a little bit different, not typical run-of-the-mill every year sort of things, and the comprehensive review, which is ongoing, of town operations, and the long-term capital plans ongoing. But with the utility fund, which I mentioned, there's also the relationship and the time involved in working with BDCC and anybody else, the state, anybody else that has an interest in that. We've got the diversity campaign going on, which not directly, but part of that is, and other issues that come up as well, includes having to now go through the process of hiring a human resources person, and which will make things easier. But again, major amount of time. You don't just read some resumes and hire somebody. Parking, we're looking at. It's always an issue, as Stephanie pointed out, but we're looking at major improvements and changes in the ordinance, and that's. Peter has to bring that to us, and will bring that to us in a really thorough way. He deals with the press and the media all the time as things come up. The Waste District has not been without some changes and events. We're looking into a jobs program, which again requires some time. Unfortunately, there are other people that are working on that, but the town has an ongoing role in that. We just adopted a new town plan, which planning people did most of that, but it all has to, it comes through here. The police fire project is mostly asleep now, but again, just a chunk all the time of every week. And then there's Union Station, and we just finished collective bargaining with 3 different bargaining units. And I guess what I'm saying is that, wow, that's a lot of work, thanks. But also to say to us, I love it that we're really thorough and comprehensive, and often stay here well past the time we're going to stay here tonight. But and that's part of why when the voting thing came up, I'm looking at this long and saying, gee, that's not really a huge issue. I think it is.
That's what I would say about parking.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my not huge issue.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, but it is actually a very large issue. It really, voting is probably it is the most basic thing. But anyway, I wanted to. That utility fund conversation and the amount of work that we gave Peter that night, which he would have done anyway, but it really struck me as something that I wanted to point out and notice and share with everybody.
May I speak to it briefly? Thank you.
A lot of goals that aren't on the list that are being met.
I really appreciate your perspective about that, and it's true. You've cited a bunch of really accurate examples in this current year. It is going to always be true for us. Some years, those things that emerge dominate, and it's hard for us to work through our list of goals. Other years, those are just the things that come up, and we try as best we can to be doing all of it. I really appreciate your recognition of that, and for the full select board, this group and the prior groups that I've had the good fortune to work with over the last 3.5 years have, better than some of the prior governing bodies that I've had the opportunity to work with, appreciated exactly that when we get to the point of overload. So what I want to keep encouraging you to do and keep promising you I will do is don't hold yourself back from identifying things that you believe we need to address out of a concern that you're overloading us, because I feel particularly safe in our working relationship to speak up when we're getting to the point where we're not going to be able to fulfill an expectation. And in the meantime, things don't always get done quite as quickly as we'd like because we're doing a lot, but we are making a lot of great progress on different fronts. And on that score, I want to make sure that it's clearly understood, particularly for the folks who are listening at home, that I know you know this and you mentioned it in your comments, but I'm the conduit through which the select board provides direction for all these different things that we are working on together. But it's the great staff that we have that is actually working on all these different things. Patrick is the point person on about half the things you mentioned. And the department heads each have their areas of responsibility where they're not only doing the day-to-day leadership of their department, but also managing those particular projects that are the larger priorities for the board. So
and Jan keeps
we're all happy to do it. It takes the team
in line, or at least organized and on task.
Absolutely.
And we've got other help, which we're about to add to with the committees around town too.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you for thanks for that
Yeah,
list, and that was
that was
just
good.
off the
It's-
top of my
It
head.
makes Brandy feel better.
Yeah, it
It's
does.
done something.
And if I could just add one small comment to that, I mean, it was fantastic what you brought up, but that's exactly my thoughts when I look at some of this stuff, and for me, feeling like the Regional Economic Hub Coalition is extremely important. And I read a magazine, and they have a regular section that always is called Boring But Important. So I think that's one of our boring but important things that we really need to leave some space for our great town employees to help us out with. What?
I just feel like
It is. It's
You just
boring.
made me laugh because,
how can
like,
you make
no.
Regional Economic Hub Coalition
it's
sound
totally fun. And I only laugh because it's such a Tim thing to say. And it's just like, I enjoy working with you, and it just is funny when, like, you just say something that's like you.
Okay. I think I said what I had to say. Anyway, I'm excited about that, but I know that so many day-to-day and nitty-gritty stuff gets in the way sometimes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
A mutual thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, are we all set with that? Do you want to move on to committee appointments? And we have 6 committees to appoint people to this evening. Brattleboro Housing Partnership, Cemetery Committee, Development Review Board, Energy Committee, Honor Roll, and Planning Commission. And we have people who have applied for each. Hey, Chris, this
I'm
could be
not done here.
really exciting.
What did Tim just say?
We might appoint you to a committee. Now that
Actually, if you leave, we likely will.
You're going on the
As
cemetery.
long as you got my quote, then you're good to go.
Oh,
Bye.
nice.
Bye.
Nice, Russ. Nice boy.
Well done.
Would somebody like to make some
I haven't done one of
nominations?
these in a long time, so I will do it.
I don't know how to do it.
I move that we appoint Thomas Murray to a 5-year term and Janet Kramer to an unexpired term on the Brattleboro Housing Partnerships Board of Commissioners. I move that we appoint Gary Stroud to an unexpired term on the Cemetery Committee, that we appoint David Whittle to a 1-year term on the Development Review Board as an alternate, that we appoint Oscar Heller to the Energy Committee for a 2-year term, Richard Campbell to the Honor Roll Committee for a 1-year term, and Kathy Erfer to the Planning Commission for a 4-year term.
Are there any other nominations? Say something. We have a motion to appoint representatives to the 6 boards that David just read. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
Why is it unexpired if it then has an end date?
Because it's somebody that's left.
Okay,
So
thank you.
it's an empty thing.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
That's what I was
Unexpired, soon to expire.
All right, right on.
Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thanks to everybody who stayed to the bitter end, which is us.
Thanks to ourselves.
Hard call.